So I got a question for you. Have any of you tried something extreme like skydiving? Oh my Lord. What about running of the bulls? Has anybody done that? That is insane. I can never figure that one out. This is one, rock climbing without ropes. Look at that. I mean, that's just, there's not even words to describe that. What about bungee jumping?
Yeah. Yeah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Put that under my chair. You know, I'm not sure why we watched as he hung there. I think that's for effect, right? So, I can't imagine anybody wanting to do that. But as I watched several videos on YouTube, I watched these people do this completely insane activity. I realized how much trust it takes to do this. First, you have to trust the guy who's putting you in that harness. And these would be the questions that I would ask. I would say, well, has he ever done this before? Has he checked every single buckle? Is this guy actually a serial killer who's looking for another victim? Now, next you need to trust the weather conditions. And if you noticed on that, it was windy there. I believe it was a little wet. You know, is there going to be this giant gust of wind that's going to slam you back into the podium, the platform? Is the heat going to snap that big giant rubber band? You know, that's all that is a big giant rubber band. And speaking of elastic bands, when was the last time that they inspected it? Is it too long now so that I'm going to go boink on the ground? I mean, you know, these are questions. And then you've got to trust that the guy isn't going to suddenly go, you know what, I'm a little bit hungry, and take his lunch break and leave you hanging there and come back like an hour and a half later. And I've got to tell you, I just thought of another one because I'm a little bit old. You've got to trust that you're not going to soil your undies. When you realize you're going 9,000 miles an hour and you're headed for the ground, and all you've got is this rubber band and a flimsy harness that's holding you between basically you becoming one with the ground. Listen, I got to tell you, at my age, soiling your britches is a real possibility. So, you know, extreme activities like skydiving, running of the bulls, rock climbing, and bungee jumping, I think are really insane. I'm not sure why anybody would do that. But here's the thing, they require an awful lot of trust. You got to trust in yourself, you've got to trust in the equipment, and you got to trust in another person. And on the road to recovery, faith and trust are just part of this process. Like the old 80s song says, you got to have faith. Step 3 is often referred, and it's funny, the 80s people laughed. Everybody else went, what is that? Look it up. Google it. We're here at step 3, and this is where it says we made a decision to turn our lives and our wills over to the care of God. So in this step, first you make a decision. You decide that your way hasn't been working. And you've tried and you've tried and you've tried to quit. You know, you've tried, whatever your drug of choice is, you've tried to quit. But nothing has worked up to this point. And you make a decision that something has to give. Your decision leads you to something like this. You say, I can't do this on my own anymore. I'm done. I'm ready and I'm willing to let God take this and try something new. You know, 2 weeks ago, we learned about learning to trust God. And in honor of Pastor John Baker, we learned a new acrostic. It was trust. And let me just review that real quickly. We First, the first step in the process of trusting God is you need to turn it over to Him. You see, you give Him your hurts and your insecurities and your addictions and your relapses and your divorce and your pain and your suffering and your failures and your doubts and your lies, all of the bad stuff. You give it to Him. And then you give God the good stuff. You give Him your hopes and your dreams, your desires and your plans and your marriage, your kids, your finances, your job, everything. Next, you rely on God. You begin developing what we call God reliance instead of self-reliance. You start living out Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and you begin to trust in the Lord to direct your steps rather than leaning on your own understanding, which always leads to bad things. And then you give Him all of the glory for helping you stay on that right path. And then you unplug from unhealthy influences. You disconnect from the people, the places, and the things that have caused you to stumble and have interfered in your relationships with God. This can include music that you listen to. Listen, I'm going to pause there. The music that you listen to impacts the way you live your life. It does. When you eat bad stuff, if you notice you get fat, when you listen to bad stuff, you get fat with sin. And so listen to better stuff. That wasn't in my notes, but that's good. So just remember that. It's even the hobbies that you have, the places that you go, the people that you spend time with. Learning to trust God requires change. And change requires that you unplug from all of those unhealthy influences. And then the S in the trust is where you make the decision to surrender your life and your will to God. You give everything. You give it all to God. Surrendering everything is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So don't get discouraged if you struggle and with complete surrender. I think it took me a couple of years to really give up all the things. And by working the steps on a daily basis, you will learn to trust God fully, but it takes time. And then the last step in the process of learning to trust God is that you have a conversation with Him. You talk to Him. You accomplish this through what? Prayer. Prayer is how we communicate with God. Your relationship with Him will grow as you spend more time in communication with Him. Now, remember, it's also critical that we listen to God after you've prayed. We are given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And we call this in Bible speak, if you will, we call it meditation. And all talk and no listening leads to a dysfunctional relationship. And for us married men, we know that, don't we? We need to listen more. And then which brings us to the second part of the teaching on step 3. And tonight, I'm going to teach you something that I think is going to be very valuable to you. Is how your trust in God will also translate into learning to trust others. And in turn, learning to trust in the process of working step 3. So we're going to answer 3 questions. The first one is, how do you learn to trust others? Second is, why is it important to trust others? And third is, who should I trust? Now, we're at the audience participation portion of the program. So here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to get out that insert, which I used to have one, but it got taken out. Take your insert out. And seriously, I want you to write down. Let's get right to this. Learning to trust others, it can be difficult, especially if you've been hurt deeply and you have an awful lot of pain and suffering. So how do you learn to trust again? Well, here first, you spend time with people whose lives bear good fruit. These are people who have a proven track record. They've been in recovery for quite some time. They have a stable life. They're faithful and they're trustworthy. So if I look around here in this room, I can see a number of faithful, trustworthy people in this room. Those are the people that you want to connect with. Their walk with Jesus is obvious. Have you ever met a person that says, yeah, I'm a Christian, and then they look anything but? I mean, they look like the world. Well, those aren't people to connect with. Connect with the ones who you want to be like. Galatians 5:22 and 23 says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, which I think is one of the most important ones. Against such things, there is no law. We call that Christian character, by the way. So a person that shows those attributes is somebody you can trust. You can't go wrong spending time with people who display love and joy. And I'm not talking about love. I'm talking about love. Okay? Oh, there it happened again. But you know what I mean. They love people, and it's obvious. And they show joy. And do you know the difference between joy and happiness? Joy is eternal. Happiness is very short term. It can just be gone in a second. Peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Those are things that we want to look for in people. And the company that you keep affects your behavior. It affects your actions. If you spend time with people who participate in actions or activities that you're trying to get rid of, chances are you'll stumble. So here's a great example. If you have family members, okay, let's say you've gotten away from family members that use drugs and alcohol, and then you decide that you're gonna go and spend time with those family members on a consistent basis. Don't be surprised when you relapse. Okay, if you have people that the friends that you hang out with, they view pornography, and so you go over to their house and there's pornography on. Chances are you're going to stay there and watch it, right? So just disconnect from all of those people. Another way to trust others is for you to become more trustable yourself. By being more trustable, and I don't know, is that even a word? I think I made it up, but I don't know. If by being more trustable in your relationships with others, you'll begin to believe that others are more trustable too. It's really interesting. When you become a person with good character, you identify good character in others, and those are the people you want to spend time with. Follow through with your commitments. If you have a commitment here on Tuesday night, guess what? Show up. If you tell somebody you're going to pay them back, pay them back. Show good character. Luke 6:31 says, do to others as you would have them do to you. So don't be a scallywag to others, and they won't be to you. And then lastly, make a decision to trust. Give people who exhibit good fruit the benefit of the doubt. That's how you'll establish good friendships. And choosing not to trust others can lead to isolation and loneliness. Listen, we have had a year of isolation and loneliness. And I don't know about you, but I am so happy that we are coming closer to the end of that. Amen? I mean, we're going to get to a point where we can hug one another. Woo! And not wear masks. Yes, praise the Lord. So just very, very, very important. So make the decision, and here's the last thing, is make the decision to trust. Like I said, because a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. So friends, look for healthy relationships. Healthy relationships in recovery are so essential. You can't do recovery alone. You just can't. Here's the next question. Why is it important to trust others? Well, the first reason is just what I said. You can't do recovery alone. In isolation, the devil can get a foothold. You're left a prisoner of your own thoughts. You begin to believe that you can't stay sober. Or worse yet, you'll start to believe that, hey, man, maybe I can just have one joint or one drink. You forget how bad it was before. and how good it can be if you stay on the road to recovery. In Proverbs 18:1, it says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. You know, that's a powerful passage. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire, and he breaks out against sound judgment. You know why? Because you're alone and you start thinking. I call it the committee. The committee starts taking over. Again, relationships are essential in your recovery. You can't do it on recovery on your own. And the second reason why it's important to trust others is because God speaks through them. God uses others to encourage you and to speak truth into your life. Hebrews 3:13 says, but encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. You see, he uses people to challenge you. He uses people to hold you accountable. And that's why sponsors and accountability partners are so critical. God uses them to tell you when they see those big red flags that might lead to a downfall or relapse. Which brings us to the last question. Who should you trust? If you want to stay sober for the long haul, who you allow to be your greatest influence is extremely critical. So trust those with a good track record. Trust those with a good track record. Again, these are people with some longevity in their recovery, and they bear that good fruit that we've been talking about. It's very important that your influences, the people that you align yourself with, are followers of Jesus whose lives reflect their walk with him. Now, some of you are saying, but Pastor, I don't believe in Jesus. I understand. I was there too. But here's what I want you to understand. I've never seen a person spend time with a person of faith and catch something bad from them. They catch good things because typically people who love Jesus are pretty doggone good people. Far too often I see people new to recovery start connecting with people who are also inexperienced in their recovery and their faith. And this can be a recipe for relapse. It's good to connect with those who are new. I mean, I love newcomers. But if you're new, don't let them be the guiding influence in your recovery. So if you got 90 days of recovery, don't spend time with nothing but people with 90 days or less of recovery. It's just not healthy. Spend time with some folks that have some long-term. Some of the people you'll trust, we talk about this a lot, are the sponsor and the accountability partners. And you might be wondering how to choose them. So in your insert, you're going to find these prerequisites for sponsors and accountability partners. For a sponsor, he's completed a CR step study. It's very important. He has a minimum of 1 continuous year of sobriety and or abstinence, which is sobriety. She is actively attending recovery meetings. Has their own sponsor and accountability team. And here's the other thing. That person must be the same sex as you. Now, accountability partners, they're actively attending Celebrate recovery meetings. They share a similar area of recovery. It's always better to connect with people who you can relate to. They must be the same sex. They're committed to growing in their relationship with Jesus, and they show signs of growth in their recovery. If you'll follow those prerequisites, those character traits, if you will, you'll find a good sponsor and you'll find good accountability partners. And here are some other people that have good track records that you can trust. Your pastor at your church. He's probably a pretty good guy or girl. Family members who are healthy and they don't they don't pose risks to your recovery. Usually family members have your best interest. Counselors or psychiatrists, those are people you can trust. People who attend CR consistently who bear that good fruit that I was talking about. And I think, you know what? Your recovery pastor and his wife, I think, are some people with good track records. Yeah. And I don't say that to get you to clap. I say that but we try to live this out. And if you ever see us, by the way, and I mean this, and you see us and we don't look like who we say we follow, you can call us out on it. Does that make sense? And please allow me to do the same in your life to help you to become a better person as well. I know I said I was only going to answer 3 questions, but here's another question that I get asked a lot. Where do I meet trustworthy people? Well, you're going to need to change a lot of the places that you go. You're just going to have to. When I was new to recovery, I learned to spend time with the winners. The people who'd been sober for multiple years. You know, winners spend a lot of time in meetings. So what I did is I spent a lot of time in meetings too. And one thing that I noticed with them is they didn't spend time in places where there was temptation. They didn't hang out in places where there were triggers. They spent time in safe places. So some of us would go to a church and meet for a meeting there, or we'd meet. Now, we did go to a casino, but it was upstairs in the casino. They had a room up there. We would go to meetings too, and we'd have coffee together. We would just spend time in good, safe places. And you see, the more time that you spend in recovery meetings and church, you'll meet a whole new network of people to do life with. And then what you want to do is you want to start connecting with them and look at the people that you admire the most. And those are the people you want to connect with. The ones who have long-term sobriety, they follow Jesus, and their lives aren't chaotic. Aren't you sick and tired of the craziness? I mean, come on now. Their lives, these kind of people, their lives bear that good fruit that we're talking about. These are people that you can trust. And you've heard me say it before. Birds of a feather. Yes, birds of a feather flock together. Spend time soaring with the eagles instead of running with the scavengers, and your life will change. You'll bear good fruit too. We've been learning a valuable skill in recovery this month, which is trust. And learning to trust God and others is really difficult. I would agree, but it's necessary. If you want to move forward in your recovery, if you'll put what I've taught you this month, your life is going to take a miraculous turn. And God will start doing for you what you've never been able to do for yourself. Now, I know there are some here tonight that you are stuck. And trust is something you don't possess. And some of you struggle with trusting yourself because you just keep running into that same familiar brick wall. And there's others in this room, you've been hurt very, very deeply, and you won't allow yourself to trust because you have endured so much pain. And then there are quite a few of you here tonight that have never, ever made the decision to trust Jesus. Listen, I want you to hear me tonight. Trusting others and trusting in Jesus. I know you're going out on a limb. But here's what I want you to know. Nothing will ever change in your life if nothing changes in your life. So tonight, I want to give you the opportunity to start trusting. If you struggle with trusting yourself, or you won't allow yourself to trust others, or you haven't made the decision to trust Jesus, I want to pray for you. Will you do me a favor? Bow your heads. And if that's you, do me a favor. Just raise your hand tonight. Yeah, I see hands going up. Listen, there's more hands than that. Yeah, I see it. I see it. And those of you online, will you do me a favor? Will you just simply comment that I struggle with trust? And we've got prayer partners that will pray for you online as well. Our prayer partners are coming forward right now. And they're going to be wearing their masks. They'll use hand sanitizer between every single prayer. And make sure that you wear your mask also. And if you're uncomfortable coming forward for prayer, but you want prayer, do me a favor, just raise your hand and a prayer partner will come to you and stand behind you and pray. Let me go to the Lord in prayer as well. Father, we thank you, Lord, that you're a holy, righteous God. And God, we know that we can trust in you. And Lord, I just lift those people that I'd mentioned, those who struggle with trusting themselves, who won't allow themselves to trust anyone else, and those who haven't made the commitment to follow you, Jesus. Lord, I pray for each of them that they'll be bold tonight and that they'll come forward for prayer or God will come to them and they'll receive the most amazing gift ever, which is to learn to trust. We love you, Lord, so much, and we look forward to that moment we see you face to face. I choose to trust you, Lord.